Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy, also known as Jackie Kennedy, was one of the most iconic first ladies in American history. Born Jacqueline Lee Bouvier on July 28, 1929, in Southampton, New York. She was known for her intelligence, elegance, and poise. She became a cultural and fashion icon during her time in the White House and left a lasting legacy as a symbol of American grace and resilience. Early life and education. Jackie was born into a wealthy and socially prominent family. Her father, John Vernou Bouvier III, was a Wall Street stockbroker, and her mother, Janet Lee Bouvier, came from a well-connected Irish Catholic family. Jackie was educated at Miss Porter's School in Connecticut and later attended Vassar College, the Sorbonne in Paris, and George Washington University, where she earned a degree in French literature. Marriage to John F. Kennedy in 1953, she married John Fitzgerald Kennedy, a rising political star and U.S. Senator from Massachusetts. Their marriage combined beauty, charisma, and political ambition, capturing the attention of the nation. When JFK was elected president in 1960, Jackie became the First Lady at just 31 years old. First Lady of the United States, 1961 to 1963. As First Lady, Jacqueline Kennedy brought a refined sense of style and sophistication to the White House. She led an extensive restoration of the presidential residence, aiming to make it a museum of American history and culture. She also promoted the arts, supported historical preservation, and welcomed international dignitaries with dignity and fluency in several languages. Her televised tour of the White House in 1962 was watched by millions and earned her an honorary Emmy Award. Jackie was admired for her fashion sense, often seen in tailored suits, pillbox hats, and elegant gowns, setting trends that were copied by women across the globe. The Kennedy assassination and aftermath. On November 22, 1963, President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, while riding in a motorcade with Jacqueline by his side. Her calm strength during the tragedy, especially her role in organizing JFK's state funeral, earned her deep respect. Her iconic image in a blood-stained pink suit became one of the most searing images of 20th-century America. Later life and legacy. In 1968, she married Greek shipping magnate Aristotle Onassis, which caused some controversy but provided her and her children with a degree of privacy and security. After his death in 1975, she returned to the U.S. and began a career in publishing, working as an editor at Viking Press and later at Doubleday. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma on May 19, 1994, at the age of 64. She is buried beside President Kennedy at Arlington National Cemetery. Legacy. Jackie Kennedy remains a revered figure for her cultural contributions, personal resilience, and enduring style. She is remembered not just as a First Lady, but as a woman who embodied grace under pressure and who left a profound imprint on American history and identity. There are many little ways to enlarge your child's world. Love of books is the best of all. Jacqueline Kennedy. Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy Onassis, a life of elegance, strength, and influence. Early years, privilege and preparation. Jacqueline Lee Bouvier was born on July 28, 1929. Into a world of privilege but also complex family dynamics. Her parents divorced when she was a young girl, and her mother remarried Hugh D. Auchincloss Jr., a Standard Oil heir. Jackie's upbringing exposed her to the rituals of American high society, yet also to the pressure to meet the expectations of that world. She was an exceptionally bright and cultured child, excelling in literature, languages, and equestrianism. Her early love of poetry and French culture would influence her worldview and public persona. While attending college, she developed a cosmopolitan sophistication, studying abroad in Paris and absorbing European art, architecture, and history, themes that would later define her role as First Lady. Becoming Mrs. Kennedy. Working as an Enquirer photographer and columnist for the Washington Times-Herald, Jackie met John F. Kennedy at a dinner party in 1952. Their courtship was a merging of ambition and allure. She offered refinement and cultural cachet, he brought political promise and charisma. They married on September 12, 1953, in a lavish ceremony in Newport, Rhode Island. Attended by hundreds of high-profile guests. The early years of their marriage included political campaigns, family tragedies. They lost 2 children, one at birth and another 2 days after delivery, and the challenges of JFK's various health problems. Through it all, Jackie remained outwardly composed, even as she navigated the often isolating life of a political spouse. Camelot, the Kennedy White House. The Kennedy presidency, 1961 to 1963, was brief but left an enduring image of optimism and youth. Jackie was central to the creation of Camelot, a term coined posthumously by Jackie in a Life magazine interview, where she invoked the legend of King Arthur's court to describe her husband's administration. The idea helped romanticize the Kennedy years and gave them mythic status in American memory. Her achievements during this time were substantial. She restored and refurnished the White House with historical integrity. She founded the White House Historical Association. She showcased American art and culture on the world stage. She charmed international leaders with her linguistic fluency and grace, most famously during the 1961 state visit to France, where President Kennedy quipped, "I am the man who accompanied Jacqueline Kennedy to Paris." Beyond her beauty and style, which became global fashion benchmarks, she was a woman of deep intellect, an avid reader, and a careful protector of her family's image. Dallas, 1963. Tragedy and Transformation. On November 22, 1963, Jackie Kennedy's life changed forever. Seated beside her husband when he was shot, she showed incredible poise in the aftermath. Her decision to wear her blood-stained pink Chanel suit throughout the day was deliberate, a symbolic act to remind the nation and the world of the horror they had just witnessed. In the days that followed, she orchestrated a funeral modeled after Abraham Lincoln's, with a riderless horse, drum corps, and solemn procession. The nation watched in awe as the 34-year-old widow led the country through mourning. The Onassis years, privacy and protection. In 1968, seeking escape from constant media scrutiny and threats to her children's safety, especially after Robert F. Kennedy's assassination, Jackie married Greek shipping tycoon Aristotle Onassis. While many Americans viewed the marriage as a betrayal of the Kennedy legacy, it gave Jackie a new form of autonomy and privacy. During these years, she largely withdrew from public life. Onassis died in 1975, leaving Jackie a widow once again, but now determined to live life on her own terms. Career in publishing and intellectual life. In her final decades, Jackie Kennedy Onassis returned to New York and forged a quiet but meaningful second career in publishing. She worked as a senior editor at Viking and then Doubleday, helping to publish works of literature, history, and art. Her colleagues spoke of her meticulous eye and deep respect for authors, a reflection of her lifelong love of learning. She also continued to support cultural preservation, including efforts to save Grand Central Terminal in Manhattan from demolition. Final years and death. In 1993, Jackie was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She died on May 19, 1994, at the age of 64, surrounded by her family. She was laid to rest beside John F. Kennedy in Arlington National Cemetery. beneath the eternal flame she had lit for him more than 30 years earlier. Legacy and cultural impact. Style icon. Jackie's fashion choices, simple, structured, elegant, helped define an era. From her Oleg Cassini gowns to her oversized sunglasses and pillbox hats, she remains one of the most imitated figures in fashion history. Cultural stewardship. Her work preserving the White House, New York landmarks, and historical memory reflects a belief that a nation's soul resides in its heritage. Symbol of strength. Jackie Kennedy Onassis became a symbol of stoic grace in the face of unspeakable grief, managing her image and her family's legacy with a deliberate, strategic intelligence that is now widely recognized. Modern woman. Despite her traditional role, Jackie lived a life that foreshadowed the modern working woman, educated, multilingual, career-driven in later life, and unapologetically complex. I want to live my life, not record it. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Jackie remains a figure of endless fascination, a first lady, a mother, an editor, a style icon, a widow, and a guardian of history. Her image endures because it was real, a balance of vulnerability and composure, public beauty and private depth. A life behind the myth, the layers of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. 1. A private intellectual in a public role. Although she is most commonly remembered for her fashion and elegance, Jacqueline Kennedy was first and foremost an intellectual. She read constantly, literature, poetry, history, philosophy, and had a remarkable memory. As a student in Paris, she absorbed the ideas of Rousseau, Voltaire, and Camus. Her favorite poet was T.S. Eliot. She even once said that literature gave her more solace than therapy or religion ever could. This intellectual depth was often hidden behind her public image as a gracious hostess and fashion plate. Yet those close to her knew she was deeply curious, fluent in French, conversant in Italian and Spanish, and had a lifelong love of the arts, all of which she used to elevate her role as First Lady beyond simple ceremonial duties. 2. The power of image and control of narrative. Jackie was remarkably strategic in crafting the image of the Kennedy presidency. After JFK's assassination, she granted an interview to journalist Theodore White, where she famously referred to her husband's presidency as Camelot, evoking the idealism, tragedy, and romance of King Arthur's court. The term stuck, and she knew it would. This was not a casual reference, it was a deliberate act of myth-making. Jackie understood the power of memory and legacy. She knew that shaping public perception in the days after a tragedy could define how history would remember them. In that sense, she was both guardian and architect of the Kennedy myth. 3. Relationship with her children. Jackie Kennedy was a fiercely devoted mother to her 2 surviving children, Caroline and John F. Kennedy, Jr. She fought hard to give them a normal life despite their fame. After leaving the White House, she shielded them from the press and insisted on as normal an upbringing as possible: ballet classes, school plays, summer sailing trips on Martha's Vineyard. She often said her most important job was being a mother. If you bungle raising your children, she once told a friend, I don't think whatever else you do matters very much. 4. Marriage to Aristotle Onassis. A controversial move. Jackie's 1968 marriage to Aristotle Onassis, one of the richest men in the world, shocked many Americans. It took place just months after the assassination of her brother-in-law, Robert F. Kennedy, and was widely interpreted as a decision based on fear, security, and exhaustion from living under constant threat. Onassis offered her wealth and insulation from public life. The American press, however, was unforgiving, calling her Jackie O, and often portraying the marriage as materialistic. Yet Jackie herself never felt the need to explain her choice publicly. Those close to her say she appreciated Onassis's companionship and his protective nature, even if the marriage was not romantic in the traditional sense. 5. Her role in American preservation and urbanism. Jackie played a quiet but vital role in preserving American history. Her most significant post-White House effort was her campaign to save Grand Central Terminal in New York from destruction in the 1970s. She joined public protests, penned articles, and used her celebrity to rally support. Her advocacy helped change the city's attitude toward preservation. Grand Central remains one of New York's architectural jewels thanks in part to her leadership. 6. Life in publishing. Editor and tastemaker at Viking Press and later Doubleday, Jackie Kennedy found a second act in publishing. She edited over 100 books, memoirs, histories, biographies, and even art books. Though she avoided putting her name on projects, she was known to be meticulous, rewriting entire paragraphs, encouraging authors, and taking quiet pride in her work. She worked with noted figures such as Michael Jackson on his autobiography Moonwalk, Naguib Mahfouz, Nobel Prize-winning Egyptian novelist, and photographer Bill Epridge. Her publishing career showed her intellectual independence and her desire to contribute meaningfully to culture beyond the roles of wife and widow. 7. Final years, dignity and legacy. In the 1990s, Jackie Kennedy Onassis began to slow down. After being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, she continued to work quietly but began withdrawing from public life. She died on May 19, 1994, in her New York apartment, surrounded by her children and loved ones. Her final words reportedly were, "Do not weep." President Bill Clinton honored her legacy with a eulogy, calling her a model for our time, who showed that grace, strength, and dignity are not incompatible with ambition and intelligence. Candle enduring legacy. Glowing star cultural influence. Jackie Kennedy's style, clean lines, pastel colors, structured suits, oversized sunglasses, is still emulated today. Designers such as Valentino, Carolina Herrera, and Ralph Lauren cite her as a major inspiration. Books. Literary legacy. Her work as a preservationist and editor was deeply rooted in her belief that a culture's soul resides in its stories and architecture. Her passion for history made her more than a passive participant in American life, she was a guardian of its memory. Dove symbol of grace under pressure. No one embodied the phrase, grace under fire, more than Jacqueline Kennedy. Whether navigating national tragedy, personal loss, or intense scrutiny, she carried herself with restraint, resolve, and a quiet power. She was a symbol of elegance in an age of noise. The New York Times obituary headline, May 1994. The private complexity behind the public icon Jacqueline Kennedy was far more than the soft-spoken socialite the world saw. She was a woman of tremendous emotional depth, political acumen, and personal resilience who lived through some of the most pivotal events in modern American history. Her beauty and grace were only the surface of a remarkably layered life. 1. Emotional life, grief, loss, and survival. Few public figures experienced the amount of personal tragedy Jackie did, and fewer still managed it with her level of composure. Multiple miscarriages. Jackie suffered a miscarriage in 1955 and gave birth to a stillborn daughter, Arabella, in 1956. In 1963, her infant son, Patrick, died just 2 days after birth. The JFK assassination. Witnessing her husband's murder and managing the immediate chaos afterward changed her profoundly. For years afterward, she battled post-traumatic stress and often experienced intense nightmares and flashbacks. Robert Kennedy's assassination, she was close to Bobby, who had stepped in as a surrogate father to her children. His murder in 1968 sent her further into seclusion and directly led to her marriage to Onassis. Jackie once privately confided that she had lived her life with a deep loneliness, even in the White House. Her trauma made her wary of the press and deeply protective of her inner circle. Those who knew her best said she developed a shield of elegance not to dazzle the world, but to survive it. 2. Political awareness and influence. Though she didn't speak publicly about politics, Jackie was politically astute. Behind the scenes, she influenced decisions, advised JFK on how to appeal to women and international audiences, and carefully curated everything from his televised appearances to state dinners. She was instrumental in rebranding JFK's image as youthful, refined, and cosmopolitan, softening foreign relations, especially with France, India, and Latin America, through her charm and cultural fluency, advancing arts and culture as part of the American identity, working to connect patriotism with aesthetics. Privately, she leaned toward liberal internationalism, but she avoided public political alignments after JFK's death. 3. Her faith. Quiet Catholicism. Jackie was raised Roman Catholic and retained her faith throughout her life, though she did not wear it publicly. After the assassination, she became more spiritual and introspective, often visiting monasteries and seeking out silent retreats. She was known to carry a rosary, prayed regularly, and believed in the importance of ritual and tradition, not unlike the way she viewed history and preservation. Her funeral included Catholic rites, and she was buried beside her husband in a Catholic ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. 4. Artistic and aesthetic legacy. Jackie had a highly developed aesthetic sensibility. She was more than just stylish. She understood how spaces, objects, and symbols could convey meaning and power. As First Lady, she filled the White House with authentic American art and antiques, drawing attention to national identity. She brought in classical musicians, poets, and dancers, treating the White House as a cultural institution, not just a seat of power. She commissioned a complete cataloging of White House artifacts, laying the foundation for the White House Historical Association. After the White House, she worked on art books, sculpture collections, and even historical novels as an editor. She supported the arts philanthropically, quietly funding preservation projects in New York and Washington, D.C. 5. Relationship with the press and public image. Jackie had a complex relationship with fame. She disliked the intrusion of the press but understood the necessity of visibility. After JFK's assassination, she stepped almost entirely out of the public eye, granting very few interviews and making only rare appearances. She despised being called Jackie O, seeing it as a tabloid trivialization of her identity. Paparazzi followed her constantly, particularly during the Onassis years and after his death. She once remarked, bitterly, "The only time they leave you alone is when you're dead." She later became a master of public invisibility, appearing only on her terms, never giving in to the demand for access. Her ability to balance public fascination with private control made her one of the first women in American life to shape her own celebrity narrative, a model followed by countless public figures since. 6. The Kennedy mythos. Architect and curator. The idea of Camelot was not incidental. Jackie gave the term to Life magazine journalist Theodore White just a week after JFK's death. She quoted the lyrics from the Broadway musical Camelot, "Don't let it be forgot, that once there was a spot, for one brief shining moment that was known as Camelot." This was not just nostalgia. It was a calculated move to give a mythic dimension to her husband's presidency, one rooted in idealism, sacrifice, youth, and loss. It turned a political figure into a legendary one and gave meaning to tragedy in the American imagination. Compass Jackie's influence by the decade role, focus impact 1950s socialite, bride. Senator's wife represented upper-class elegance, learned political dynamics. 1960s First Lady, widow cultural preservation, international diplomacy, Camelot myth. 1970s Onassis years shielded herself and her children from the public, scandal and reinvention. 1980s editor, intellectual re-emerged as a respected literary figure, reclaimed independence. 1990s elder stateswoman quiet dignity in her final years, re-evaluated by scholars and feminists. End conclusion. Beyond the pillbox hat Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis was a woman of contradictions. Poised yet private, glamorous yet cerebral, adored yet elusive, she lived at the intersection of history, myth, and modernity, and managed, somehow, to carry the weight of a nation's grief, hope, and fascination. She remains one of the most iconic women of the 20th century, not because of the tragedies she endured, but because of the intelligence, poise, and strength with which she endured them. One. Jacqueline and feminism. A quiet revolution. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis never publicly aligned herself with the feminist movement. She didn't march, sign manifestos, or speak on women's liberation. And yet, in retrospect, many feminists have re-evaluated her as a woman who carved an autonomous life on her own terms. Constrained by convention, freed by choice as First Lady, she conformed to expectations of the era, stylish, supportive, soft-spoken. But she subverted that role from within, using it to promote arts, history, and global diplomacy. Her second career in publishing, starting in her late 40s, was a declaration of independence at a time when many women were expected to fade into domesticity or celebrity widowhood. Jacqueline never declared herself a feminist, but by living life with intentionality, self-respect, and intellect, without apology, she quietly embodied the movement's core values: education, autonomy, and the right to self-define. Open Book 2. Literary taste and influence. Jacqueline's literary sensibilities were foundational to who she was. She not only edited books, but read deeply and widely throughout her life, keeping a private library of poetry, classics, and modern fiction. Authors she loved: T.S. Eliot, especially the four quartets. F. Scott Fitzgerald. Particularly tender as the night, she identified with its tone of doomed glamour. Marcel Proust, for his attention to memory and detail. William Shakespeare. Especially the tragedies, she encouraged reading in her children as well. Caroline Kennedy became an accomplished editor and author, and John F. Kennedy Jr. founded George Magazine. Blending
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.